Hello everybody, hope you're doing marvellously well. In this episode, I am letting my friend Pete Woj take over. Pete has a wonderful YouTube channel called Mix Better Now. What I love about Pete is, first of all, he's a great guy and he's really enthusiastic and brings that enthusiasm to all of his videos. But he works in different DAWs, one of which, of course, is Studio One. So in this episode, we're going to talk about using Addictive Drums. In fact, the new Addictive Drums, Addictive Drums 2. So he's going to show us how he uses that in Studio One. Now, why do I talk about that? Because as you know, I've used Addictive quite a lot myself for creating either drum samples, by using Melodyne to create the MIDI and then triggering Addictive sounds, or also when I'm just programming a beat and writing a song. Let him take it away and show us how he uses it in Studio One.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Pete here with producelikeapro.com and mixbetternow.com, and today we're going to be taking a look at a blend of some production and mixing techniques, specifically how to use Addictive Drums 2 inside of Studio One. I'm going to show you how quick and easy it is to get up and running so that you can use it when songwriting, when demoing, or when recording your own projects. So let's jump in and let's check it out. All right, so just want to let you guys know that I'm going to try and move quickly here. And the reason I'm going to do so is because this is actually a very quick and easy process inside of Studio One. I love many different DAWs, and I also work in Pro Tools in addition to Studio One. So this isn't about what DAW is better or any of that stuff. This is simply just trying to help you find solutions and show you things that are helpful in different DAWs. I think the best DAW out there is whatever the best DAW is for you that allows you to make your music. That being said, that out of the way, let's get Addictive Drums 2 fired up. Now, the way that I'm going to do this is very similar to some of you who might use Superior Drummer or Easy Drummer or things like that, but I'm just using Addictive Drums, and you can take the same concepts here and apply it there. So we're going to go into our Instruments folder here over in the browser, and the way that we get this up and running is we just click and drag it inside of the Arrange window. And it does its thing, it loads, and voila, we have Addictive Drums 2 very quickly up. It automatically puts it on a stereo track, so this would, I guess, be a virtual instrument track. And the first thing we have to do here is pick which drum kit we want to use. So we have our menu here. I'm going to toggle through some of the libraries, and the drum kit that I want to use is going to be the United Pop Kit. So we're just going to go down here and click on that. Just so you know, on the left here, you can sort of, you can demo or you can listen to what all these different presets sound like by clicking on these play buttons. Now, I'm going to use the acoustic pop kit, but I'm going to be taking a lot of the processing off, and I'll show you why in a second. So let's make our way over to the beats page, and let's go ahead and dial in a like a MIDI pattern that might be something cool to sort of give us some inspiration, maybe when we're writing or when we're kind of formulating our demos out. So the library is pretty big, but I'm going to come up here to the category. We can sort of go through, all the different genres: blues, funk, metal, punk, reggae. But instead of that, I'm going to go to the library and I'm going to click on favorite beats. So what this is going to do is this is going to pull down a bunch of stuff that I've sort of, went ahead and indicated that I've liked. I'm going to hit sync tempo here. If I don't do that, it will play it at the tempo that is pre-designated per beat. So for example, if I click this and hit play, that's playing it at a 105. This would be at 128. So what I'm doing there is I'm hitting the sync tempo button. Right now it's at 87. I might speed this up a little bit. Let's go to something like 91. And very easy to do in Studio One. When you're creating your sessions, you could check off a box that says stretch audio to tempo. So that way when you have stuff in here, you could physically stretch it to whatever time you want to designate for your BPM. So I'm kind of digging this Rock Song 11. I am going to increase the BPM a little bit. We'll go to 95. It was just a little bit slow. Now, the reason that I'm using this is because it has a couple tom fills in it, so I want you to be able to hear those because those are going to be some of the tracks that we are going to mult out from the stereo track. We're going to make all of these audio tracks on their own. So the way that we get this MIDI information into our project here is all we do is click and drag. So I'm going to just physically click this up here, and we can start on bar 3. Okay, so now all of our MIDI is up here. So if I hit the space bar, it's going to play from Studio One instead of Addictive Drums now. Okay, we're going to make this a little bit bigger just so you could sort of see some of the MIDI information in here. We could jump to some different parts. All right, so the next thing I like to do is I like to take a look at the kit. So if we click on the kit button here, we're going to basically see all of the drum pieces that we have to work with. Obviously, we've got a kick and a snare, so we're working with a 22-inch Lydian Ludwig kick. We got a 14x5 trump snare. 14-inch hats. We've got 4 toms. We've got 4 crashes and a big old 26-inch ride. Now on the bottom here, you're going to see these flexi tracks. Now what these flexi tracks indicate is you can basically stack samples on top of each other. So if you want to add another snare drum to get a huge snare sound, or you can add things like clap tracks and percussion, shakers, tambourines. What's in the first one here is some claves. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that it's playing, because if the MIDI doesn't actually trigger what's in the box, you're not going to hear it. We do have some effects, though. There is a spring plate, and there's a spring plate on the claves, and specifically for the snare. You can see that the snare is going here to this Flexi Track 3. So anyway, now you know that you can basically come in and you can pick different drum pieces if you want. I like to do all of this stuff ahead of time, because when we go ahead and we go from MIDI to audio, it's just going to save us a lot of hassle. Although we can go back and forth very quickly, I like to just get my sounds in, and sort of figure out what tone is going to work for me. All right, so the next thing we're going to take a look at here is we're going to click on the effects. These are going to be all the effect settings we have. And then the edit window here is basically where everything happens. So as you can see, there's a bunch of different tools that we can use in here. There's a compressor, a distortion unit, we've got EQ, there's a transient designer, tape saturation, there's even some high and low pass filters. There's some analog noise that we can implement, so it's very, very cool, and you can tweak to your heart's content. But that's not really what I want to do here. I just want to get the tone of the acoustic drums. I don't want to use any of the compression, don't want to use any of the EQ or the transient shaping or the filters, so we'll get rid of all that. So if I hit play, you'll hear what that sounds like. Back it up a little bit, and I'm also going to turn these effects off. Now I'm hearing a little bit more reverb, so that means that I have left this these two spring plates on, so we're going to mute these. Okay, so if we look down here in the mix window, which is this guy right here, we're going to be able to see a couple different things. I have instruments checked off. I have this checked off, which will show us our tracks. And what we can do by seeing the instruments is it'll show us that we have an instantiation of Addictive Drums active inside of our session. So in order to mult everything out, the first thing we have to do is come here to this to the kit window. So we're looking at all of the kit pieces. All right, we've got the kick, snare, hats, 4 toms, 3 flexi tracks, an overhead, a room, and a bus. Now, I don't want to use all of these. We can use all of these, and if you did want to do that, you would hit this arrow down here, and you could hold Command if you're on a Mac, the Apple button, as I like to say. I've been on a Mac for a while, or you could just hit Command, and it'll change everything to this separate out. So what I want to do is I want to set everything to a separate out, and I want to set it to post fader just for ease of use. So we're going to set everything to post fader. I'm going to skip the tracks that I said we weren't going to use. So I'm just going through, and last time I'm going to bypass these flexies. I don't want those on, but we are going to use the overheads and the room, and I'm going to leave the bus alone. So now that we have that there, I'm going to close Addictive Drums, and what we're going to do is we're going to come down here to our instruments list, if you will, and all we're going to do is click on Addictive Drums one time. And you see we get this little box open up. So all that we have to do is check off which kit pieces we want to use in our session. So we're going to click the kick, snare, hats, toms 1 and 2, toms 3 and 4, overheads, and our room. Okay, so now that we've gone ahead and done that, it sort of bypasses the master here, and it's going to send everything out to these to sort of like these placeholder tracks. Now, what's really cool about this is it's already gone ahead and named everything down at the bottom, so I don't have to go in like, you know, for example, in Pro Tools, if I do this, I would have to you know, create a bunch of aux sends, or I'd have to create a bunch of audio files and kind of get those set up, and then I'd have to get all my I/O going on buses, and then I would have to print that audio out. But here we don't have to do that. It's a lot easier and quicker. I'm going to hit the space bar so you could see the audio information playing down here. And it's as if we have audio tracks all ready to go. So if I just solo the kick, it acts just like an audio track, but we're not actually at the audio track level yet. So here's what we have to do. So if we come up here, we have to highlight our whole, our MIDI area, a region, a clip, whatever you want to call this. And we have to make sure that this is clicked on and highlighted. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to come up here to track, and we're going to go to the transform dropdown, and we are going to click on transform to audio track. The next thing that comes up is a menu. Now this is a little bit important, and I want you to make sure that if you're going to be doing this, that you have some of these things checked off. So I always have render all channels checked off, and what that does is it creates audio tracks for all instrument outputs, and that's what we want, right? We want to make these audio tracks on their own so that we can process them you know, as we wish, with compression, EQ, you know, saturation, anything we want. Now, render inserts is an option you could have, and now when this becomes useful is, for example, let's say I come to the snare and I want to throw a little compression on it. So I've got my UAD folder open. So if I throw something like an 1176 on here and I wanted to compress it a little bit, I could certainly do that. Now, I haven't set it up, but my point is that we can dial in our drum sounds before we commit to audio. So obviously the rendering of the inserts will include the inserts and all of their sounds when we render that to the audio phase, but we're not going to do that. So we're going to go back to track, transform, and transform the audio track. So like I said, I leave this unchecked because I want to apply that stuff after. I just want to get the raw files up as if it was a drum recording where we went and tracked everything, you know, as is. So I leave that unchecked. The next thing I like to do is preserve instrument track state. Now the reason this is important is because when we want to go back to MIDI, it's very easy to undo this or to go back to your MIDI track. And the reason you might want to do this is if, you know, you're drawing in a drum performance and you want to change where your kick drum hits, or you want to change where your snare drum hits, you could very easily do this. So I always leave that checked. Now I leave remove instrument unchecked, but this is a great feature if you have a computer or a machine that is sort of a little bit older and slower, or, you know, you kind of need as much CPU as you can get. You would check this box, and what it would do is it would remove the virtual instrument of Addictive Drums out of your Studio One session. So really brilliant, but I'm going to leave that unchecked for me. And then the last thing I'm going to leave here is audio tail. And what this does is it ensures that the tail of the drums are included. This is extra important if you have things like effects on your drum kit already. So if there's reverb and you want the reverb tails on there, leave this checked. I always leave this checked because I would rather have something and not need it and get rid of it than need it and not have it, right? So after all this stuff is checked and I'm good to go, I'm gonna hit OK. And as you can see, it's going to go through and it's going to render or transform each of these placeholders into actual audio tracks. You're not seeing anything yet because it needs to go through the processing that it's doing for everything. Then you'll see it in the mix window, and then you'll see it in the arrange window. I keep calling it mix and arrange window because I've been a Pro Tools user forever, and I know they're probably called something else, but don't get on me about that. I know it's probably I forget what they call the actual arrange window. I call it the arrange window, the edit window. So anyway, we're almost done with this. We've got a couple more drums to go. We're just finishing Tom 4. Now we're doing the overheads. And then we just got the room left. And it's so easy, because what I like about this is you can click it, you can go grab a drink or something or take a little break. You can come back and it does it for you. Whereas in other DAWs, you might have to, physically go through and set all the tracks up and then physically print them in real time. It's just a little bit more laborious, and here, it's very quick. So here's the last one up, and everything pops up. There is all the stuff in the edit window and in the mix window. So what it does essentially is you can see that there's MIDI information still underneath the WAV files. So you're going to see two things in the lanes here. You're going to see that there's waveforms. So if I increase the size of them, by doing that, right, there's our wave files, our waveforms, but there's MIDI information underneath it, and the reason being is we can always go back and tweak the MIDI. It's just saying like, hey guys, I was once a MIDI track and now I'm an audio track, but I can go back if I want. So we're gonna get rid of these placeholder tracks, excuse me. Now, for some reason, this creates a master. I don't want that, and the reason I know that it is that is because of this little keyboard icon down here. So this is an actual audio track with this little icon. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide all these. So we will shift click, right click, and then hit hide. And then you can see over here on the left, everything got grayed out. So it didn't delete it. It's just kind of letting it hang out over here. And we can bring them back if we want by clicking on the little white button. All right, so now that everything is sort of tidy, the last thing I want to do is I just want to make our drums a different color. And it doesn't matter what we make them. I typically make drums red, but just for fun, we could do something like, that's kind of obscene. Let's go for a more mellow green. There we go. So now all of our drum tracks are green. I'm going to leave the master a different color just so that I know this is in fact the master MIDI track, and if we need to go back to it, we certainly can. So now that everything's multed out and printed to audio files, we can hit the space bar and play, and nothing's going to play through the master. You will see each individual track. So the next thing that we're going to want to do here, I personally, when I mix, I like to have certain drums in mono and other things in stereo. I like my kick, my snare, my toms, all in mono because, right, when you're miking a drum kit, you're gonna mono spot mic everything. Unless you're doing some type of EDM thing where there's effects on it and it's a stereo snare or a stereo kick. But for this purpose, we're gonna make these mono. Now you're gonna see a little symbol right here of 2 circles. When the 2 circles are up, that means it's stereo. And when you click it and there's 1 circle, that means it is in mono. You can also tell based upon the meter right here. So if I solo this, see how there's 2 meters, a left and a right. Now I clicked on it to mono it out. Now you'll see 1 meter. So what we're going to do is we're going to just mono the snare, the hats, and the toms. And I'm going to leave the overheads and the rooms in stereo. So very, very quick to get things from stereo to mono, right? We don't have to split into mono and then pick one and pan it and then delete them or hide them. Very easy, very quick and tidy. So now the next thing that we're going to do here is we know that everything is coming through. So what I want to do is I want to make some panning decisions ahead of time. Now I like to pan drummer's perspective. A drummer's perspective indicates that you're hearing the drums as if you're the drummer and you're sitting at a drum kit. Most drummers are right-handed, so I typically will pan hats to the left, floor toms to the right, rack toms sort of over here, and any extra toms, just like you're sitting at a drum kit. The alternative is audience perspective. If you're watching a drummer play, you'll hear it the opposite way. But that's just the way I like to do it. So I'm going to want to move the hats over to the left a little bit and all that stuff. So what we're going to do is send everything to a bus. Now, to create a bus in Studio One is very easy. All we're going to do is click on the first track here, which is the kick, and we'll shift click on the room. Everything's highlighted. We're going to right click, and what we're going to do is we are going to go add bus for selected channels. One click. Everything now is routed to this bus. You'll see the input here, and you'll see the output there. So it's still called bus 1. So we're going to rename this. We'll call this drums. And as soon as we do that, everything will be labeled drums. And now this is going to the mix bus, which is exactly what we want. So now if I hit solo, this is another very cool feature of Studio One, is that, like, let's say we had a big session here and I had a drum bus and a bass bus and a guitar bus and a keys bus, and I just wanted to solo all the drums. All I would have to do is hit the drum bus, hit the solo button. Everything solos as you see there, and then you can hear all your drums. It's very easy, and it's a very cool way to work. Now everything's good. Let's go ahead and pan some of these drums out. I'm going to move the hat a little bit to the left. Let's zoom in here. We've got all 4 toms being played here, so that way we can get a nice image of what our toms are going to sound like. They're a little bit loud. We'll bring them down in a minute. Okay, very cool. I'm going to drag these down just a little bit here. That's another easy way to actually move faders all at one time, just so you know. If you shift click like we've been doing with a bunch of these different tasks, and you highlight all of these tracks, all of these faders will move as one group. Just a very handy, easy little way to work. Cool, so we'll leave that there. I'm just gonna make my bus white. This is what I do. And now everything's kind of sitting panned out, right? We've got everything on the audio tracks, which is great. So a couple other things that I will do during this process is I will set up 2 effects channels. So all we do is right click, and whatever channel you click on, the effects will appear next to it. So I'm just gonna hit Add Effects Channel 1, Add Effects Channel 2, and I wanna put a little bit of parallel compression on these guys. So we'll go P drums. I use a lot of parallel compression when I mix, just something that I enjoy. And then we'll do a little drum verb here. So we'll go verb. So that way everything's set up. Typically I would send these to an effects bus. That's way down the line. That's not what we're even talking about right now, just so you know. So the first thing I want to do here is I'm going to go to the drum bus and I'm going to pop in a little bit of tape. I like to send my drums to about 1/2" tape. Really love the UAD Ampex ATR 102. Sounds awesome. I'll even put a 1/2" tape on my mix bus that I really like, but we're not there yet. So I'm going to turn the noise off. I'll leave the wow and flutter on. I'm not driving this any harder. It's just simply leveling out some of the bigger transients. We're getting a little bit of that tape saturation and a little bit of the glue, and I feel like this just kind of gives it a little bit of weight. Okay, very cool. Let's jump over here. Now, we kind of want to pick out a compressor that we're going to use. I already know in my head something that I like and that is a go-to of mine. We'll go to the effects folder. I'm going to grab the UAD, the Rev A 1176, which is down here, somewhere down here. And, also known as the Blue Stripe or the Silver Face. I just really like the way that this guy sounds. So we'll get this here. The other thing I'm going to grab right now is I'm also going to grab an API 550A, and I'm going to put an EQ after it, because something that I'll commonly do when I'm mixing drums, specifically in parallel, is I'll put an EQ, something I'll call a vibe EQ, which might have a transformer in it or some tubes in it, something where I'm going to do some boosting. So I'm going to go for the API 550A. We'll drag this in here. I'm not going to turn any knobs on it now, but we'll get our 1176 all set up. Now what we need to do is we need to get all of our drums sent to the parallel compression track. On a bigger session, I might group kicks and snares and toms together and send them to their own parallel compression bus, just so I don't overdo the compression, but only one kick and snare track here, so we don't really need to do that. I'm just going to send everything into the parallel compression drum bus. So the way that we do that is highlight, shift click, and then we're going to go to the sends here, hit plus. I'm going to click on P drums, and that will put our send on every single track. Now, one thing I want to make sure of is I want my send volume to be at unity. I want it to be at 0. Now, the reason I want it to be at 0 is because the way I like to dictate the amount of parallel compression I blend in is actually with the effects fader, not on the send. So I like to do it on the return side of things. So if I command click this, it should bring everything to unity. Sometimes it doesn't, as you can see there. Got to do it twice. So now everything is sitting at 0 at unity, and let's dial in our 1176. So I like to go 12:1 ratio. It's just kind of a standard place I start. Slower attack for me. I don't want to murder the transients. I like to let some of it get through, but we're going to compress quite a bit. Release time, I like to go as fast as possible. I'm going to back off the output a little bit because I know it's going to get a little bit loud. Cool, so we leave it there for now. The next thing sometimes that I'll do is I'll come up here and I'm just going to show you. It's too early in the mixing process to know because we don't have other stuff in, but something that I'll typically do is I might push a little bit of 3K in the mids and a little bit of 10K on top, specifically with a shelf. So we'll push this in to make the high frequency band here a shelf. Got it on 10K. We'll click this over to 3K. And let's just listen to what this does. I want you to pay attention to the snare. 3K is something I like to push out just to get the snare to poke, especially if you got a dense mix going on. That's exaggerated, of course, but we'll bring it back. So it just makes the snare feel a little bit more snappier and a little bit bigger, a little bit of sheen on the top. But for now, we are going to bypass this guy. So the next thing we're going to do here is we might set up a little bit of compression on the drum bus. Now, I don't want to go overboard, like I said before, because we don't really know what we're going to need yet. But I do know that I am going to need a little bit of compression on the drum bus because I could just see by the transients, we've got a pretty dynamic drum performance, and I'm going to want to just sort of, kiss the drum bus compressor. That way we could get the transients under control. We're going to set a noise floor, and we are going to set, I went up and I said floor. We're going to set a noise ceiling, and a noise floor. So we're going to have all the audio information sort of live between here and here. Going to grab something that I will commonly use, like an Alicia M-Presser from Plugin Alliance. So we'll grab this on here. Sometimes it can be a little bit too much. And if it is, a more transparent option I like is I love the FabFilter Pro C2. So we can throw that on there as well. And I don't know if you can, obviously you can see on the side here, we've got all these cool little thumbnails, a very cool feature of Studio One. is in our plugins folder, it allows us to make these thumbnails. And the way that we do that is when we're on our track here and we have the plugin open, if we just click on this drop down here, you will click update plugin thumbnail, and whatever is going on the screen, you will see over there in the folder. So just a little fun trick. So let's first try the Alicia Empressor here. Again, I just want to knock off a couple dB, nothing crazy. I'm muting our parallel compression because I don't want that to sort of sway my decision for how much compression we're using. Matter of fact, I'm going to pull this down right now. I'm going to go for like a 3-to-1 ratio. Back top. Listen to the sustain of the snare drum. So we're getting some cool movement there. You know, for me, compression is just as much about movement as it is about sort of being a volume knob and controlling transients, right? So it's a great way to add some of those things in. All right, so let's see where we're at with our attack and release times. About 20 milliseconds on the attack. Release is around 134. That sounds okay to me. We'll bypass it real quick. We'll try the Pro Q2. I'm sorry, the Pro C2. They make so many great plugins. Now, one thing I really like about the Pro C2 is its versatility. You can do a variety of things on here. This isn't about plugins, but I just wanted to mention that. Let's pull this in and out. This might be a little bit more appropriate because we're going to pull in our parallel compression now. So I'm going to unmute this. As you can see, I have the fader all the way down. And as I said before, in terms of how much level we're going to get back from our parallel compression, I like to use the return volume. So, you know, right away, I feel like the drums are already sounding good. They're sounding big, fat. We have some options that we could bring in and take out for when we kind of get a little bit further down the line, you know, if we're songwriting or we're demoing or, you know, we're just building out our project. The last thing I just want to do is I want to put a little bit of reverb on here. Just give a little bit of depth to the whole kit. Don't really know how much or what I'm going to need right now, but I am going to drag in the Slate Verb Suite Classics. They just released their version of the Lexicon 224. So let's get a little room thing going on. We'll go room V2. See how this sounds. Now, again, the way that we get all of our sends going here is, let's bring this up a little bit. We're going to highlight everything. Shift click. Hit the plus button. And we're going to hit verb. And this is going to give us a -6 on the send. What's cool though is when it's highlighted, we could sort of bring this down all at the same time. So it gives us a nice control over it. Let's see what this sounds like. Drop. What? All right, so like I said, we don't know what we need yet, but we have it there. We're ready to go. Everything's set up. It is so easy to create buses and effect sends and to get everything moving, as one symbiotic unit when we are mixing. So the last thing I want to show you is we got all the drums set up, right? So let's just say you're working and as I mentioned before, you might want to go back and say, okay, you know what? I want the kick to play a different pattern. Instead of an 8th note on the hat, I want to do a 16th note on the hat, or I want to go to a quarter note on the hat, or maybe I don't want to go to the hat at all. You can change all of that stuff. So the way that we do that is we'll hit F3, get rid of our mix window here. I'll make this a little bit bigger so you can see it. We have all these tracks highlighted, okay? Everything is on. Again, you just click and shift click all of our drum tracks. And basically the same way that we go about going back to MIDI is the way that we got to audio. So all we're gonna do is come up the track and we're gonna go down the transform, and then we're gonna go transform to instrument track. One click, and we're right back where we started. And if I hit the space bar, you're gonna see that we have one stereo track up here. Let me bring this in. So as you can see, it's reading everything up there, and we're right back to where we are. So if we double click on this area, we can come in here and we can edit our MIDI. If we bring this up, zoom over. All right, so here's our MIDI performance, and we can go back and forth. Now let's say we wanted to jump back again. We can go edit, undo, transform to instrument track, and we are right back to where we were. Let me just go to the mix window instead of the edit window. Okay, and we're right back to having audio tracks, so you could jump back and forth, edit your MIDI, tweak your audio settings, go back to the MIDI. You could even change things. So let's say we went, let me just make sure we got everything highlighted. So let's click on kick and room. So if we go to track, transform to instrument track, and then we just click on this, now we're back into Addictive Drums. And, if we want to swap out a kick and use a different kick or use a different snare, I know you guys get what I'm saying. So it's that easy. This is kind of how I use Addictive Drums too inside of Studio One. And as I said before, you would do it the same way if you're using Superior Drummer or, Easy Drummer or Slate Drums or anything like that. You can use whatever you want. The concept is the same. All right, so that's it from me. My name is Pete with ProduceLikeAPro.com and MixBetterNow.com. If you guys haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe, make sure you hit that like button, and head over to Produce Like a Pro. Make sure you jump on the email list. You will be sent all kinds of free goodies, and of course, you will be kept in the loop. As always, I appreciate your time very much. I appreciate you guys watching. I hope you all have an awesome day, and I will catch you next time.
I hope you enjoyed that. Hope you had a marvelous time. Of course, as ever, leave a bunch of comments and questions below. I will endeavor to get Pete to answer the questions. Throwing you under the bus there, Pete. So, of course, have a marvelous time recording and mixing, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.